You all can hear. I hope you all can hear me. And as you just have seen, we are going to record this session. So just so you're aware, and so it can be shared with members who aren't able to attend today. So anyway, thank you all for taking some time today to meet to discuss box tree moth. My name is Jamie Albers. I'm grower sector specialist with the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, and I've been working on this file for since 2019 with CNLA, and I'd like to we'll take this time to give a brief introduction of where we've been with box tree moth and of course where we are now. And I'd like to send thanks to Jan and Jim for helping get the information out for this meeting. And it is a discussion, so I want you to be feel welcome to comment or interrupt and ask questions as we go along. That's what this meeting is for. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation. So if you'll allow, if I can take 10 minutes just to give a quick summary of of what we want to accomplish today, and we can go from there. You will see that Jeff Olson has just joined us as well. Jeff is is the chair of the box tree moth task force at CNLA, and that is a group that's been meeting every couple of weeks over the last few years to help manage the box tree moth issue across Canada. Okay, I will just share my screen and then we will get going. Can everyone see that? Does that show up with the agenda?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, excellent. So, all right. So anyway, I'd like to do today is just do a quick introduction of the last 5 years with box tree moth. I want to share a little bit about what the box tree moth certification requirements are for growers who are in regulated areas. And then, of course, we'll get into what the CFIA consultations including the two options for expanding the regulated area for box tree moth, and then open it up for discussions and questions and answers. This is a brief timeline or short timeline of the main events that have happened over the past 5 years. As you will know, most of the activity on box tree moth was occurring in Ontario until last year. And so most of this is relevant to Ontario, but obviously played a key role in where we are now. And so it was first discovered in a Toronto residential area in November of 2018. And so we don't know how box tree moth arrived there. It was in a landscape, but it didn't come through imports of nursery stock, because all growers in Canada self-propagate boxwood. So we're not sure how it got there, but it did. And in the winter of 2019, CFIA developed a technical advisory committee to help manage this issue in Canada. And CNLA sits on that committee, as does CFIA staff and Provincial Ministry of Agriculture staff as well. And that group meets every 3 weeks to help manage box tree moth as well. So in the summer of 2019, we set up a surveillance to figure out how far the pest had spread and if it had spread in Toronto, and that surveillance has continued every year since. In 2020, the US implemented phytosanitary requirements for imports of boxwood into the US. At that point, it was an added inspection by CFIA to ensure the plants were free of box tree moth prior to being exported. And that was applied to growers across the country in BC, Ontario, even though the pest had just been found in Ontario to date. In April of 2021, the pest was discovered in a propagation house in a nursery for the first time, and that was in the Niagara region. And unfortunately, some plants did make it into the U.S. That spring as well. To one shipment was detected, and unfortunately, the U.S. at that point determined that the risk was too high, and they amended their federal order, prohibited all imports of boxwood, euonymus and ilex from Canada entirely. And that was pretty devastating to producers of boxwood for sure, and the growers were interested in determining how they could work towards regaining access to that market in the U.S. In 2022, box tree moth was added to Canada's list of regulated pests. Before that, it wasn't regulated, and it was once it was regulated, then CFIA could work towards developing programs to manage its spread through the nursery trade. And CFIA, of course, or CNLA, sorry, worked closely with CFIA in developing those programs. But it took time, and it was spring 2023 before the domestic program was implemented in Canada, and that was in May of 2023. So prior to that, of course, there were no domestic regulations in the movement of boxwood. So at that point in May of 2023, growers who wanted to ship outside of the regulated area, which at that point was Ontario, were required to have an approved pest module in place, outlining the pest management practices they would be taking to ensure plants were free of box tree moth when they left the nursery. And of course, unfortunately, in 2023, as you all know, box tree moth was confirmed in garden centers in all of the eastern provinces, including Quebec, from plants sourced from Ontario. So that was not the outcome we were hoping for, but it is what happened, and it's why we are where we are right now. So spent the summer reviewing the program itself and the BMPs, and of course CFIA did continued surveillance in the east and determined that there were established populations in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. Even though plants had been received in PEI in Newfoundland, Labrador with box tree moth, they haven't found reproducing populations in the landscape in those two provinces yet. So anyway, that's where we are, and for growers, it's been devastating, to be honest, in terms of lost sales. These are some numbers from July. You can see that almost $16 million in lost sales, 13 or 14 million of that, of course, would have been destined for the US market. And of course, with the oversupply in Canada, there was a corresponding loss of margin because growers were discounting their pricing to move that added supply. So at July 2023, they were looking at almost $22 million in losses to the industry from box tree moth, and loss of sales due to box tree moth. So as I mentioned, growers were required on May 23rd, 2023 to implement a pest module, and that pest module had a lot of stringent rules on what growers needed to do to grow box tree moth and ship to areas that weren't regulated. And at that point, of course, it was only Ontario that was regulated. And the pest module that they had to implement was rigorous, and unfortunately, there were holes in one of them, I suppose, that allowed for plants to move to east. And I guess what I should point out here also is that since it was only effective May 23rd. Prior to that, there were no regulations in shipping boxwood. So prior to that, it is possible that boxwood was shipped into the east without with box tree moth on them as well. And this is just a map of showing where the interceptions at retail garden centers were by the end of June of 2023. And you can see they were widespread and were in each province. And that brings us to where we are now. So with those interceptions, it obviously caused a lot of angst and losses for garden centers as well in those areas with plants needing to be destroyed, and having CFIA in your operations inspecting for infested plants. Since there were confirmations of populations in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Quebec, CFIA is mandated to expand the regulated area to those areas as part of the regulations that they have in place. So CFIA determined to consult with parties and sent out a consultation in December of 2023, offering two options for expanding the regulated area in Canada. The first, of course, was just to regulate those with infestations, confirmed infestations, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. And the second option, which CFIA recommended, was to regulate all provinces east of Ontario. So that included everybody. So in essence, if that was chosen, the entire eastern side of Canada would be regulated for box tree moth. And what either option means in terms of moving plants, if you are in a regulated area, then there would be no domestic movement certificates required to move boxwood within that regulated area. So as we stand right now, Ontario is the regulated area, and growers can ship freely within Ontario. It's when they want to ship out of Ontario that they need the domestic movement certificate. And the one thing I should add here as well is that anyone in the regulated area is prohibited from shipping boxwood to British Columbia. British Columbia is recognized as a pest-free area. The pest doesn't exist there, and there are a substantial number of boxwood growers in British Columbia. And CFIA and CNLA felt that it was necessary to protect that area from infestation. I mean, there's natural barriers to infestation with the prairies where boxwood doesn't grow, so there are no host plants for box tree moth between Ontario and British Columbia. And of course, the Rocky Mountains provide a natural barrier as well. But it was felt that if we could keep British Columbia pest-free, then we might be able to regain access to the U.S. market for British Columbia growers, and that did work actually. In December 2023, BC growers were allowed once again to ship boxwood into the United States market. So that's going to ease a lot of the oversupply happening in Canada at this point in time. But anyway, that is where we are in. And since this consultation was out, we've heard that it doesn't seem not everybody was aware the consultation was occurring, and of course CNLA supported option 2, and there is some recognition that perhaps not everybody, not all members of CNLA agree with that support that we gave to CFIA for option 2. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. I appreciate you giving me the time to at least to give the background. And if here is, I guess, where I'd like to just open it up for discussion and questions. If you have any, please ask them here. As I mentioned, CFIA will still accept comments. They haven't posted the new regulated area yet, and based on some of the feedback that the East would like to provide more comments. Please bring them forward here, and I can certainly bring them and share them with CFIA. So at this point, neither option has been chosen, and there's still opportunity to influence which option CFIA chooses. So anyway, thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen, and yeah, if you could use your hand, I'll try to moderate this discussion, and certainly want to hear what everyone has to say. So yeah, anyway, I just got a note that the presentation was minimized. Sorry about that. I hope it was big enough to see. All right, does anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments?
All right, I don't know. I'll raise this hand because I don't know how to raise the other one.
Okay, fair enough.
I just wanted to see if you can clarify what the definition is by regulated area. What do you mean by regulated areas?
Okay. So box tree moth is a regulated pest.
Right.
So we know where it is in Canada based on our surveillance. So a regulated area is basically where the pest exists in Canada, or an area where we think it exists in Canada. It's basically a boundary where CFIA can impose movement restrictions, phytosanitary requirements for plants that move outside of that area. So it's similar with emerald ash borer. There are areas that are regulated, and ash cannot move out of those areas. You can't ship ash out of those areas or move firewood out of those areas. And so by the nature of the movement of pests, regulated areas change over time, and CFIA has to determine what makes most sense in terms of the size of a regulated area when a new pest is discovered. So as I mentioned, at this point in time, Ontario, the whole province of Ontario is the regulated area for box tree moth. And at this point in time, CFIA was looking to expand that regulated area to other provinces.
Okay, thank you. So the whole purpose for this call then is to get our input on whether we'd to get comments from us to see if we want to keep that regulated area or expand the regulated area type of thing. And by expanding the regulated areas, does that mean only growers within that province can ship within that province?
So right. So this, yeah, the point here is to get your opinions on what type of expanded regulated area you prefer. The regulated area is going to expand. It's just whether it'll be 3 provinces or 5. And yeah, once that expansion occurs, then growers in any of those provinces can ship plants within those provinces without the need for a movement certificate or being part of the pest module certification that's in place right now.
So that would mean someone from New Brunswick could only ship within the province of New Brunswick, correct?
It means they could ship anywhere in the 3 or within New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Quebec, or Ontario,
without being clear of the pest.
It's still illegal to ship with the pest on the plant because it's a regulated pest, but you wouldn't need to be certified to ship to Nova Scotia or Quebec. You could do that without a movement certificate within the regulated area.
Oh,
Jesus, if he
okay,
could.
thank you.
All right, Jan, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, this is on behalf of one of our members. Is the status quo of having the certificate no longer an option?
So it's not a requirement anymore if the area is expanded. So if option one were chosen and PEI and Newfoundland and Labrador were not in the regulated area, then growers in the rest of the provinces would need the certification to ship into Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland, to ship boxwood into Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland and Labrador. If they are included in the regulated area, then yeah, the pest module certification for all intents and purposes wouldn't be required. Growers wouldn't be required to maintain them to ship in Eastern Canada. My understanding from growers in Ontario who export or used to export is that they would continue implementing the requirements for the certification, because at some point it will hopefully support them if they want to export plants into the US, but it wouldn't be a requirement for them to maintain that pest module if they were shipping within the regulated area.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, if I could just step in for a sec too. Morning, everybody. So our task force has been in place for 3 or 4 years now in working on this pest. And I think the fact that we found CFIA and others found box tree moth in the maritime provinces this past spring probably means that it's been there for up to 5 years already. So it's not just a brand new, this thing is very hard to detect. And so before you start to see like some feeding damage on plants in the landscape, it's probably been there for quite a while. And I know our first find in Toronto was in 2019. Jamie, I think it said was 2019.
2018.
Sorry, 2018. It was probably in town since 2015. So I guess the argument to expand to all of the maritime provinces, even though you don't have a pest found yet in PEI or Newfoundland, is that it's probably there already anyway, because if you have a garden center in PEI, you've been buying from growers in Ontario probably, and 3-4 years ago, it wasn't easy to detect, and they didn't have the protocols in place and the spray programs and things like that. So it's probably already there. And so the argument to expand into those regions sort of makes more sense for ease of shipping into those areas. And for you, if you have a garden center in PEI and or Newfoundland, and you're the only provinces that require a movement certificate, growers may not see the market being large enough to spend the extra money to do all that paperwork to get the product to you. So that could be a downside. So we already believe the pest is probably there already. I would say as a garden center, you want to make sure you're buying from somebody who has the protocols in place. So ask that question of your suppliers. Make sure they have the protocols in, like, nobody wants to ship plants with pests on them. That's not the goal here in expanding the region to go, okay, well, we don't have to, follow any of the protocols anymore. Like Jamie said, the growers in especially southern, this is a big grower issue in Southern Ontario. Their upside to staying clean is the reopening of the US market. It's not necessarily the maritime market. You know, the losses, the $20 million in losses aren't coming from issues in shipping to the Maritimes. It's really in shipping to the US. And so most of the growers in Southern Ontario want to keep their status and want to keep clean because, you know, for one, they have integrity and they're good producers and they want to keep their plants clean and they don't want to ship you a pest. But the big reward by staying on the program will be to get export happening again, which as a task force, and I'm sorry I'm droning on, but as a task force, we did achieve, along with CNLA, to reopen the border for BC growers. And that makes a massive, that was just in the past 3 months. So it does take time, and Ontario growers are seeing that border can reopen again. We can get access to the US market again. It's imminent within maybe the next 12 months. And so they're really incentivized to keep those protocols up. So I guess it's a long explanation as to why it would make sense to regulate the entire East Coast versus just where we've actually got true fines in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Sorry if that's a long explanation.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And I see Michael has his hand up as well. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but part of your explanation just doesn't fly with me. You're taking the onus off of the growers and putting it on the landscapers. Because if to say that we are infected, but we don't know it, well, let's wait until we know it and then expand the area, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm a landscape contractor. So all of a sudden, if these growers are allowed to ship in nursery stock that are not regulator or certified, then in my mind, with the amount of boxwoods that are planted in landscapes, you're taking the onus off of the growers and putting it on the landscapers to then in turn go out and rip this plant material out and put something in that's not going to be infected. I don't understand the reasoning behind that myself.
If I could just explain that out for it from my side. We're not advocating that anybody rips anything out. There are sprays in place that you as contractors can use for your clients to control the pest. So that's what contractors are doing here, where where we're pretty heavily infected in the landscape, not necessarily growers, but in the landscape. There are a couple of sprays available. Certainly one, BTK, which is used for gypsy moth as well. They're good sprays that you should be using for your clients, not just going and ripping out hedges. That's not what we're advocating for. And secondly, I think that you're right. It does lower the burden for paperwork for growers, but that doesn't mean, again, if you're buying from a grower who has the protocols in place, they're not shipping. That's why I said, like, you want to make sure you're buying from a grower who's certified. So that would kind of solve that problem. Or we could just make the decision not to or make the recommend. I mean, CFIA is ultimately makes the decision, but they ask industry for input. We could, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, it's going to be expanded. The pest is there, it's found, it's going to be expanded to those provinces. The question is, do we do PEI in Newfoundland at the same time? That's the question. And really, that's up to the provincial associations to give us guidance as to whether you want to do that or not. I'm just kind of giving you the risks on both sides of the argument. Being the pest is there already, and it might be more complicated from the market size for growers to actually service the sell plants to those provinces due to the extra paperwork they may have to do. They may have no problem with it. Like it may be no problem at all. I'm just saying there could be a risk. That's all.
Okay, Joe, and then we'll go to Michael after that.
Yes, I guess one thing to kind of clarify, the over the last 20 years or so, CNLA has developed some very good inroads with CFIA. This is a kind of a good news case study that they're asking industry input on this. They've engaged CNLA on this. Years past, these were directives that just came down heavy-handed, no input from producers on how it was going to impact our industry. So, you know, in one respect, this is a kind of a good example of how CNLA and CFIA are working together on this. As Jeff had mentioned, it's they've found populations in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, in Quebec. So these markets are going to be expanded as part of that regulated area. There's still cross-border movement of plant material by individuals. So by keeping the border closed to PEI isn't going to stop somebody from loading up their car at Costco and heading home on the weekend. It's not going to keep them from a shopping trip to Halifax and picking up product there. So it's not going to isolate it. It's only going to make that a little more problematic for suppliers to ship product into the province. And my understanding is that, like they were saying before, the same pest modules that they put in place for movement certificates, they're going to keep in place to ensure that they're producing clean product for future markets. So it's not like it's, you know, all bets are off and let's just ship all the infested stuff to Newfoundland because nobody cares. I don't see that scenario coming. The onus needs to be on, I guess, on you as end users to ensure that your suppliers are following the correct protocols, make them accountable.
All right, thanks, Joe. And Michael was next.
Yeah, I just we deal a lot with boxwoods in New Brunswick, obviously. Now, I'm just kind of curious: is there any type of preventative measure to take that we can kind of catch it early enough, maybe, and establish plants? I know the growers are probably doing as much as they can on their end for preventative measures before shipping, but is there anything we can do? Like, I know there's a spray, but is there anything that we can do before it gets too bad? You know, because I assume the infestation is probably going to cause a lot of damage. And by that point, it's probably too late, right?
Yeah, it moves very, very quickly once the larvae start feeding in June and May and June, sorry. So yeah, the best thing to do is to look for it. And if you see even one larva or one pupa that is overwintering, to spray BTK dipel immediately 2 or 3 times. It's very effective, but the unfortunate part is most people don't see it right away. And the second infestation in July and August, the plants are decimated.
Kind of where I'm getting at, kind of thing. Like, yeah. Is it too late when we see it? Is it too late? Can we spray or put anything before June, or kind of avoid that?
Yeah, it's not too late if you see it in May and June. You'll be successful, but you do need to check again in July and August because the moths will fly and lay eggs again, right? So
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we're working on systemics that would give a longer so the sprays that are available are contact sprays. So
Right.
they're, that's so you've got to, you can do it a week or two before as a preventative, but you got to hit the bug. So you got to really, and there's info online. So I'd say educate your customers who have boxwood hedges. Look at the zones like where the infestations are on the map, and then make sure that you're offering them a spray service. In those 2 time periods, especially June and August.
All right, thank you.
All right, Marie, I see you're next. Morning.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, loud and clear. Someone else is, if you could mute if you're not speaking, I hear some background noise. Okay, go ahead, Marie.
Okay, just a couple of comments on some of the conversation that's been happening. I believe it was Joe that just mentioned, that he felt confident that dirty stock was not going to be shipped into the Maritimes, and it was in the grower's best interest to do that. But when you were explaining a regulated area, you mentioned a couple of things, that no certification would be required to move within that area, which means no certification would be required to move from Ontario or Quebec into Atlantic Canada. And so, as Joe mentioned, people could go to Costco, buy something, take it to PEI or to somewhere else in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, and possibly spread infected plants based on the possibility that they got their material from an uncertified grower. I know that people in the landscape industry, for the most part, would want to support those growers that they've had a long-term relationship with, that they know are producing clean stock. But when we're dealing with box stores, they don't always have that same interest. I'm assuming that. I guess one thing we don't know is, and it doesn't matter at this point so much, but I was not aware that it wasn't until May 2023 that the regulations came down. And I'm kind of wondering why it took so long to get protocols in place so that the insect did not get to spread further from Ontario. If the industry was interested in providing clean stock to the United States and protecting that market. I know that's a government issue. CFIA is involved in that, and that's another story. I don't want to beleaguer the conversation too much, but I am concerned about the fact that coming into Atlantic Canada will be stock that will not be certified. And we know that that insect can travel 10 kilometers a day. If there's an interest in protecting the US border and it's in New Brunswick, close to Maine, it's going to fly over, right? So there's a lot of stuff in this that's a little bit frustrating to process. But anyway, at the end of the day, I'm on here because I wanted to give voice to Ian from Cool Breeze Farms. He couldn't be on the meeting, but he was instrumental in getting the word out there to a lot of people that this the decision was going to be made on this rather soon by CFIA and CNLA. So Ian's words were that there should be no boxwood coming into Atlantic Canada unless there is certification and a moving certificate from the nursery grower for the next 12 months. By this time, people in Atlantic Canada will be able to make a more informed decision, and they will have opportunities to work on controlling the insect in the areas where it has been found. According to the maps, Nova Scotia has only had insects found in one location, and I think Fredericton, it's 3 locations. And if I compare that to the Japanese beetle, which was deregulated here maybe 10 years ago, in the beginning, it was in one location, and now it's spread all over the South Shore and is infecting a lot of different species of plants. I know that the box tree moth is, you know, specific to the box tree is my understanding, but so those are just some thoughts that Ian has had on it, and if we can't have it, you know, certified stock coming to PEI, then maybe there should be no stock at all, but I can't talk for everyone. But those are just some thoughts I wanted to put out there.
Thank you, Marie. Yeah, the U.S. of course has box tree moth as well now. It is in 4 states: New York, Michigan, Ohio, and Massachusetts. And yeah, it's at some point the U.S. will have to determine how it's going to manage box tree moth and movement of boxwood around the states as well. So you're right. I mean, it is close to the U.S. border, and that is in New Brunswick, and that is one of the reasons why the regulated area has to be expanded, because of the international plant protection regulations that exist between Canada and the U.S. So, yeah, I mean, we can if Ian would like to share those comments with CFIA, they do have an email address where comments can be sent, and I'll share that with Jan and Jim at the end of this meeting. So individuals are welcome to comment to CFIA as well, and certainly feel free to do that if you have your own opinions on what you've heard today, or what you how you think CFIA should manage this issue.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And Jacob, I think you're next in line.
Hi, thank you. Just to backpedal a little bit to the spraying, I'm just curious, with the sprays, are they regulated? Like, do you need a spraying license for them? And if so, is there any options for contractors who aren't certified to manage the pests?
I know I'm not sure of each province's regulations on whether the sprays are available. So sorry, I don't know exactly, but all I can say is BTK is a biological spray, so it's Bavaria. So I would expect you would still need a spray license as a landscape contractor, but it should be available in your provinces for use.
Jamie, I think if you have to have an applicator certificate to purchase it, you need one to apply it.
Okay.
Well, that particular spray is available at retail, as a lot of the garden centers would know. So I'm not sure how that applies to contractors then. If they don't, if the public can buy it, I don't know what the spray requirements are for contractors, but it's certainly widely available for retail sales. You don't need any, the public can buy it, no problem.
Okay, and Jenny.
I just wanted to make sure that I had my facts right. So we just thought we were doing the right thing by only purchasing from certified growers, but by expanding the regulated area, does that mean that growers don't have to be certified now, or are they mandated to be certified, or does that go away when the area expands?
They won't be mandated to be certified when the regulated area expands. So yeah, it all comes down to what expansion is determined at the end, right? If PEI is not regulated and Newfoundland is not regulated, then growers would still need to be certified to ship to those 2 provinces.
I would just say once again, it's incumbent on you to ensure that your suppliers are certified or are shipping clean plants and are part of the program. If you want to be like extra sure, you can always buy from British Columbia. There is no pest in British Columbia. So, I mean, if you want it to be like super like sure, then there are growers in British Columbia that can ship to the East Coast as well.
Thanks, Jeff. And Michael.
I guess back to my first comment. Why are we not putting this more so on the growers? Why are we not mandating them to be certified then? Why are we opening the doors to this and putting it out there even more so? If we're deregulating or regulating areas, to me, it's almost like it's deregulating everything. It's like willy-nilly then. Why not put the onus more so on the growers and force them to be certified if they want to sell their product? It just doesn't make sense to me at this point. I know they're losing a lot of money, but why not ante up, do your certification and make sure your product is clean?
Yeah, and that's I guess the short answer is CFIA won't do that. That's the way it is in a regulated area. CFIA is not going to expend the resources to inspect farms to be certified for a pest within that regulated area. So yeah, it sort of it falls back on the trade to certify itself. You know, if you want to purchase certified plants, and you will find growers who are still maintaining the pest module and yeah, that's just the way it is. CFIA only has so many resources, and they just won't implement a program like that. All right,
And again,
Karen.
and again, it's not. It doesn't benefit a grower to have the moth in their nursery. It just destroys the plants that they have. So every grower wants to keep them clean. It's really again incumbent on the customer to make sure that their supplier is following protocol. There are some, there are perhaps a handful of folks who don't have ethics and would ship anyway. Jamie, you had said it's illegal to ship a plant with that's infected with the moth.
Yeah,
even within a regulated area. What is the penalty? Do we have penalties established at this point? Like let's say I'm a garden center and I receive infected plants from a supplier. What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah, I mean it's illegal, but I don't know if there's a consequence to the illegality from CFIA, right? It's it is a regulated pest, so it's not supposed to be shipped by law. So, but CFIA, will they have consequences for someone who does? I've never seen it. So it's probably another incident where if someone is caught in that situation and does ask CFIA, it would be a new thing for them. So I'm sorry, that's not the answer, but it is the answer you want to hear, but that is the reality.
Yeah, I think Kevin asked, and I'll let you go back to the hands that are up, but the question was, what do we do with the plants? I mean, yes, destroy them, but ship them back to the vendor, get credit, all of the above of what you would normally do when you receive a product that is inferior, that has, that is infected with aphids or other pests, all of the protocols you would normally follow when you're receiving product that you're inspecting at your job site or at your garden center, same protocol, I would say. So go back to the hands.
Okay, I think Karen was next.
Hi. Short of individual garden centers or landscapers submitting their opinions or desires to CFIA or CNLA, is there a critical mass? In order for you to make a recommendation to go with option one, how would that come about? Like, are you going to need to poll PEI and Newfoundland members, or like, how does that work?
Yeah, I was hoping to get a sense from the folks here, whether they had preferences one way or the other with option 1 or option 2. Because yeah, we did hear some vocal opposition to PEI in Newfoundland and Labrador, or for PEI particularly, being included, and that was one person's opinion. So we need to know if it's more broad than that. I suppose we could send a survey. That's not a bad idea. I could ask Jan and Jim if they'd be willing to support that, to get a better sense of the scope of that. Then that's a good option and good suggestion. So let's work towards that. But certainly in this meeting, if you have a feeling, please let me know before we close.
Well, I guess I would just add that, I mean, my feeling as someone who's instructed on IPM, IPM is about prevention. And I think, even though we recognize that it does exist and it will, continue to move, if we can slow down that process, just like we have with EAB, coming up with plans as to, choices going forward with what we replant, and minimizing the risk, doing our, pest checks and so forth, monitoring the plants and that. I don't see how we cannot be diligent, like do our due diligence and at least leave leave PEI in Newfoundland with those options. And I think by doing that, personally, it would also help to keep it top of mind in the rest of Atlantic. So for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, it's like, okay, we need to, kind of do our part in making sure that we're not spreading it. And I think, again, it's all about education. The public, as much as yes, things can happen and they're going to get or buy or transport what they want. If we educate our members, the word gets out there, it gets into schools. People, I think more than ever, especially since COVID, people want to be in this mode of self-preservation, which includes our environment. So I think it's our due diligence to at least consider it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Michael.
Okay, this will be the last time I raise my hand, I promise.
No worries.
To say that, one thing that struck me again, to say that CFIA only has limited resources, you guys need to talk to the potato farmers here from PEI. Because if they can shut down the whole industry in PEI potato farming, then you know what? If they don't get pressure from the industry to do the right thing, then you know what? They're going to do willy-nilly. So as far as I'm concerned, if we don't pressure them to do what needs to be done, and my honest opinion right now is I don't want us to be included in the regulated area. Like I agree with Karen. I think preventative measures should be put in place first rather than jumping the gun. And this is all like new to us as an industry on PEI. Like the word of mouth, the word of this didn't get out to any of the members here, other than I was talking to Ian one day and he showed me this letter that he'd received at the garden center. And I mean, it was like mind-boggling how this has all come about without any of the membership knowing about it through Landscape PEI, Landscape New Brunswick, through the associations. Like nothing has come down the tree. So anyways, that's just my opinion for what it's worth. I promise my last time my hand gets raised up, unless somebody causes me to do it again.
All right.
Thank you for putting this on, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think we've heard that those sentiments as well. And I think as CNLA, we will take that note and make sure moving forward that regions who are going to be impacted by things like these are well notified ahead of time. So appreciate those comments. Marie.
Just a couple of other comments. From CNLA's standpoint, can you not, have you considered having conversations and putting forth some pressure on CFIA from the collective associations in terms of asking for certification for all growers? So that, as Mike said, things aren't shipped willy-nilly from people who are not certified. Like, I think that holds the industry to a standard. If it's not box tree moth, it's going to be something else down the road. And so I think we need to be more proactive in what else might be coming along, because we all know in terms of climate change and things getting warmer and transportation, we are going to be facing more insect problems. So as Karen also said, being proactive and working together and working with the government, and as Mike said, putting pressure on them, things may change and shift in a more positive way so that situations like this may be prevented in the future, or at least mitigated. And then the other thing is, okay, if we're going to be shipping certified and uncertified stock into New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and we want to slow that process down, what is going to be the PR that goes out? Or is there going to be PR come out from CNLA to help educate the public and the associations on how they can let the public and the consumer know that we're trying to hold ourselves to a higher standard and buy only certified stock and not be buying stuff that's uncertified? And so the consumer, to educate the consumer on what they need to look for when they are buying boxwoods. That's
okay, thanks. And if as retailers and landscape contractors, if you're looking for some of that information, we went through all this in 2019 and 2020 in Ontario, so there is a lot of information for communicating with your customers on the Landscape Ontario website. And if you just Google Landscape Ontario box tree moth, there's a large repository of information there that you can use to communicate with your customers.
Thank you.
All right, and we are nearing 10 o'clock, so it's been an hour. I don't want to cut this short if people have more to say, but does anyone have anything else to add?
So do you have what you need, Jamie, to move forward, or are you still looking for input from Jim and Jan from the provincial? Sounds like you are, or
yeah,
you should get some next steps, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just thinking about
absolutely, yes. I do see one more hand up, so I'll do that, and then we'll talk about next steps. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
From Scott's, by the way. I don't know why Shrub is up there, but that's probably my computer. So I'll just mention what Jenny put in the chat, because she had to leave. And our big worry isn't like, I do all the buying and I make sure I buy from a reputable company. I have a good relationship with them, and you know, the boxwood I get is clean. Like, they have very high protocols in place now. But what we're worried about is perhaps the box stores, they just get whatever cheap product they can get usually, right? The cheaper, the better. And they may not have the same, standards that we have in buying. And I think that, you know, that's our main concern. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I think it makes sense totally. I think the ironic thing about last year is that the fines were all at independent garden centers.
Yeah.
That is the ironic part of that conversation, is that the fines were not in box stores. They were all at independent
were
garden
there.
centers.
And one of them was in mine, but I noticed them the day they came in. And I immediately put all of them in garbage bags and contacted CFIA.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do for sure.
Yeah.
100%. So
But see,
And
I bought those boxwoods from a different company.
And I believe in PEI, they were caught at the Kent Building Supply Garden Centers, not an independent.
okay,
Yes.
I'm not aware of. I don't think we put the name, or the CFIA puts the names on anything.
No, yeah.
But I just anecdotally, that was what we had heard come
Mm-hmm.
up the grapevine. So everybody's got to have their due diligence. I would say, like, everybody's got to be diligent. And Jamie, one more question, Jamie, how long does it normally take for an order like this to actually come into effect? Would it be for this spring, or would it be for after spring normally? Given it's March.
I mean, CFIA has been pushing to get a directive published by April 1st, but publishing and putting into effect is different. So the Minister of Agriculture has to sign off on it. And that was part of the delay in getting the first regulations in place. Was the minister took 6 months or 4 months to sign off on it. So it's hard to say, but that the intention, I think, from CFIA is to try to get this in place for this spring. But obviously that probably, based on what we're hearing today, will take a bit longer. So it might take a bit longer depending on the results of the survey. So what I would suggest from this point moving forward is I'll take the comments I've got from the chat and what you've said, but also send out a very short survey to members. It'll be a Survey Monkey with preferred option with the background information and then any comments. And if we could get responses by within a week or so, I can share those responses with CFIA, and that will influence how they determine which option to choose. Does that work, Jan and Jim? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think that's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, sorry. And all right, I really do appreciate the turnout today. So it's obviously a big issue, and it will remain a big issue for a while. And it's one of those, unfortunately, one of the new invasive pests that we're going to have to learn how to manage as an industry, whether you're a grower, a retail garden center, or a landscape contractor. It's not the end of the world. I know in Europe they are living with it, and boxwood is still a very popular crop and landscape plant in Europe. So anyway, I appreciate all the comments, and if you have any thoughts or want to reach out to me directly, please do so. I'd be happy to speak with you more about it. And my email address is just Jamie, JAMIE @canadanursery.com. So Jan, you've got one.
Yeah, sorry, one last
to
question. You
Yeah.
said you were gonna send out the email for the CFIA as well. Can you do that in your survey?
Correct. Yep,
Great.
I'll do that as well. And
Thank you.
that will be the email you can respond to individually to CFIA. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and we'll get that survey out by tomorrow for you, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you,
Jamie
Jamie.
and Jeff.
Together.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.